Alright. We're here. Get out of shit. Damn. Damn y'all. Out of shit. Stay out of shit. You left me just when I needed you most. I sound like shit. I sound like complete shit. Tell your mama, tell your pa, you're going right back to fucking Arkansas. You dumb ignorant bitch. That's where you're going. You're going home. These illegals gotta go home. The way it's gotta be. That's a perfect bag for this shit right here. Perfect. He's weird. She's a weird bitch. I found a piece of weed. All tidied up. How nice. Kamala. She's black. You didn't know? What if she starts working? Ugh. Well, now what? Now what? All this change with me. Might need it. Might need it tomorrow. Give me a little donut, a little water. start my day. Thank God for Dayquil. Thank God. I got another one. That's all I got left. God, I hope I don't feel as bad as I did today. Tomorrow. Today sucked. I just slept most of the day just because I didn't feel like dealing with it. I was listening to the Trump podcast, but fell asleep. I was so sick. He was making sense. He's talking about legalizing weed and everything. Me and Rogue had a falling out. He's not mod anymore. I'll let him explain it to you. I don't even want to talk about it. He said he's looking to legalize weed. But you gotta do it. I don't have a game on Sunday, just Thursday. Who's playing? I don't even know the fuck's playing. When did we make a deal for Sunday? I gotta refresh my memory on that. I thought it was just Thursday. News to me. What did I get for Sunday? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Just close out for tomorrow. Boom. Save time. What contract for Friday? Is it in my DMs right now? I don't know. I ain't seen it. Oh, Taylor Swift winning that. She's repeating this year. She's coming back. Get ready, Taylor Swift NFL. We'll be hitting you all season long. Hell, everybody beats the Browns. They suck. I don't even watch football and know that. No president told me that many times. What's the contract for Friday? I ain't signed up for Friday. What are you talking about? Yo, I can stop at Verizon over the next couple of days and deal with them over it. my schedule for the week. Tomorrow, 7 to 2:30. Thursday, 7 a.m. to noon. And then Friday, 7 a.m. to 3:30. Off Saturday. Good shifts. Tomorrow, fly by. There's just so much to do in there. Hell, you ain't got time to sit around and be bored. I don't know about Sunday yet. If I do work Sunday, it'll be in the morning though. So Sunday's the start of the next work week. That schedule ain't out yet. I worked Monday this week. I was off Tuesday. I was off Sunday. I wasn't even supposed to work Monday, but I called the store manager and I was like, "What's my schedule?" Because no one had gave me one yet. They were supposed to call me and give it to me. And I was like, "Well, I'm ready to work." And he's like, "Well, come in tomorrow." I'm like, "All right." So I probably stole that day. Probably wasn't even supposed to get Monday because it was Labor Day. Everybody was like, "Why did they have you work on a holiday as your first day? That's not normal." And I'm like, "Because I asked to work." I was fucking blowing their damn phone up. I'm trying to get some hours, shit. I'll take Friday for the game. 20 for the game. Write down the time for these games. So I'll know to be home. Is the bass still up? Dude, I got on earlier, but God, I felt like shit. I just turned it off and went to sleep. I didn't have no energy to sit on there and do anything. I gotta teach Maple how to do stuff. They don't. None of them know how to wire up turrets. Like the way they wire them up is so dumb. Like they put a small battery down with like a solar panel hooked to it. It's so dumb. Why don't y'all just learn how to attach it to those big ass batteries? It ain't even hard. You can watch a video on it, but you don't even need a video, really. It's not hard. Not difficult at all. So I'll get on and wire them up real quick. Wire them up. Apparently there's a debate next week. I didn't even realize it. Next Tuesday, they're debating him and Kamala. I think she'll struggle with the debate. We connect this. Well, now what? What's going on tonight? I'm on the test. What the fuck? Old Donald Trump. Yeah, let's listen to that podcast. I never got to finish it earlier. Dude tattooing people's names on his leg for $200 a piece. This is crazy. What the hell's going on? Somebody had him tat "Trump is my daddy" on there, and he did it. Look at that. People be crazy, bro. People really fucking nuts. I guess if you don't mind putting tattoos on yourself, though, easy money. How much to watch Trump and Lex Friedman right now? Right now. Yeah, sit in the 5. Oh, well. Simple 5. It's a fair deal.
You a fascist?
So I figure it's all right to call them a communist. Yeah, they call me a lot worse than I call them.
A lot of people listening to this, myself included, that doesn't think that Kamala is a communist.
I believe you have to fight fire with fire.
Politics is a dirty game.
It is a dirty game. That's certainly true.
How do you win at that game?
Suffer from massive derangement, TDS. And I don't know if it's curable from their standpoint.
We'd probably have a better world if everybody in Congress took some mushrooms, perhaps.
Medical marijuana has been, I've had friends and I've had others and doctors telling me that it's been absolutely amazing.
Of clients that went to the island has not been made public.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
I can't believe it.
Thank you for this. I've been able to customize everything to show what I love.
That's cute, Maggie, but Imprint has changed my...
The following is a conversation with Donald Trump on this podcast.
They're getting smaller and smaller.
They're getting smaller.
Right?
I mean, people do respect you more when you have a big camera for some
No,
reason.
it's cool, and about 20 guys that you pay a fortune to. Right?
All right. Okay. You said that you love winning, and you have won a lot in life, in real estate, in business, in TV, in politics. So let me start with mindset, a psychology question. What drives you more, the love of winning or the hate of losing?
Maybe equally, maybe both. I don't like losing, and I do like winning. I've never thought of it as to which is more of a driving force.
I'm close with a lot of the greats in sport. You think about Tiger Woods, Muhammad Ali. You have people like Michael Jordan, who I think hate losing more than anybody. So what do you learn from those guys?
Something different, the great champions have something very different, like the sports champions. And, you have champions in other fields, but you see it more readily in sports. You see it over a weekend, or you see it during a game. And you see that certain people stand out, and they keep standing out. It's there for you. It doesn't take a lifetime to find out that somebody was a winner or a loser. And so the sports thing is very interesting, but I play golf with different people, and there's a different mindset among champions. There's really a very different mindset. There's a different thought process. Talent-wise, sometimes you can't tell the difference in talent, but the weekend they seem to win. And it's very interesting, like as an example, Tiger or Jack Nicklaus is a phenomenal winner. And he does have a different way about him. And Tiger has a different way about him. And Michael Jordan, for one, you would think that there'd be one way. Arnold Palmer was the nicest guy you'd ever meet. And then you have some champions that aren't really nice. They're just focused on doing their job. So you have, there's not one type of person. The one thing I would say that everybody seems to have in common is they're very driven. And
They don't seem to give up easily.
They don't give up. But they do seem to be, they have a passion that's maybe more than people that don't do as well.
You've said that politics is a dirty game.
Yeah.
Past.
It is a dirty game. It's certainly true.
So if it is a game, how do you win at that game?
Win at that game by getting the word out and by using sense. You have to have a feeling where it's going. You also have to have a feeling of what's right. You can't necessarily just go what's popular. You have to do what's good for a country if you're talking about countries. But you have to get the word out, and you have to just continuously, like for instance, you have a great show, you have a great podcast. It's very well watched. And I'm sitting here and I do this. A lot of people see it, and I do other things, and a lot of people see that. And I go traditional also. You have traditional television, which is getting a little bit older and maybe less significant. Could be less significant. I don't know. but it's changing a lot. The whole plane of platform is changing a lot. It's changed a lot in the last 2-3 years. But political standpoint, you have to find out what people are doing, what they're watching, and you have to get it. You have to get on. I just see that these platforms are starting to dominate. They're getting very big numbers. I did Spaces with Elon, and they got numbers like nobody's ever heard before. So this is you wouldn't do that on like radio. You wouldn't do those numbers, no matter how good a show. You wouldn't do those numbers on radio. You wouldn't do them on television.
You've been successful in business. You've been successful in politics. What do you think is the difference between gaining success between the two different, disparate worlds?
Yeah, and it's different, very different. I have a lot of people that are in business that are successful, and they'd like to go over to politics, and then you realize they can't speak. They choke. It's hard to make a speech in front of that. And let's say you're talking about a big audience, but I get very big audiences, and for many people, it's virtually impossible to get up and speak for an hour and a half and have nobody leave. It's not an easy thing to do, and it's an ability. But I have many people that are very, very successful and love to do what I did, and yet pull the trigger. In cases, I don't think it would work. Almost for everybody, it's not going to work. It's a very tough thing to do. It's a big transition. And now, if you talked about people in the business and politics going into business, likewise, that wouldn't generally work out so well either. It's different talents, it's different skills. I have somebody who wants to go into politics so bad, but he's got a little problem. He's got stage fright. Now, he's a total killer, but if he gets up into a stage in front of people, he doesn't do well. To put it mildly, actually. I mean, he does badly.
So you have to be able to make hard decisions like you do in business, but also be able to captivate an audience.
If you're a politician, you have to be able to speak in front of large crowds. There are a lot of people can't do that. Ain't it? They can't even think about doing it. And they don't. There are many people in business right now, I could name them, but I don't want to embarrass anybody. They've been talking about running for president for 15 years. And they're very big in business, very well known actually. But it takes guts to run. Like for president, I can tell you it takes guts to run. It's also a very dangerous profession, if you want to know the truth, but dangerous in a different sense too. But it takes a lot of courage to run for president. It's not easy, but you have, and you know, the same people as I do, there are a lot of people that would like to run for president that are very, very successful in business, but they don't have the guts to do it. And they have to give up a lot.
One of the great things about people from the business world is they're often great deal makers. And you're a great deal maker. And you've talked about the war in Ukraine, and that you would be able to find a deal that both Putin and Zelensky would accept. What do you think that deal looks like?
A deal, I wouldn't talk about it too much because I think I can make a deal if, and as president-elect, I'll have a deal made. Guaranteed. It shouldn't have happened. It's terrible. Look, Biden is the worst president in the history of our country, and she's probably worse than him. That's something that should have never happened. A much tougher deal to make than it would have been before it started. Millions of people. I think the number's going to be a lot higher when you see this all at some point iron out. I think the death numbers are going to be a lot higher than people think. When you take a look at the destruction and the buildings coming down all over the place in Ukraine, I think those numbers are going to be a lot higher. They lie about the numbers. They try and keep them low. They knocked down a building that's 2 blocks long. These are big buildings, and they say one person was mildly injured. No, a lot of people were killed. There are people in those buildings, and they have no chance. Once they start coming down, there's no chance. So that's a war that absolutely has to get done. And then you have Israel, and then you have a lot of other places that are talking war. The world is a rough place right now. And a lot of it's because of the fact that America has no leadership. And I believe that she'll be probably worse than Biden. I watched the interview the other night. I mean, it was just a softball interview.
So you would like to see her do more interviews, challenge more?
No, I can't believe the whole thing is happening. We had a man in there that should have never been in there. They kept him in a basement. They used COVID. They cheated, but they used COVID to cheat. They cheated without COVID too. But you had somebody in there, and now we have a woman that is not, I mean, she couldn't do an interview. This was a really soft interview. This is an interview where they're giving her multiple choice questions, multiple guesses.
They were giving her multiple choice questions.
And I don't think she did well.
funny.
I think she did very poorly.
How do you think you'll do in the debate coming up in a few days?
So I've done a lot of debating, only as a politician. I never debated. My first debate was the Rosie O'Donnell debate, right? The famous Rosie O'Donnell debate. The answer. Well, with debates, I mean, I became president. Then the second time, I got millions more votes than I got the first time. Well, if I got 63 million, which is what I got the first time, you would win. You can't not win. I got millions and more votes than that, and lost by a whisker. And look what happened to the world with all of the wars and all of the problems, and look what happened with inflation, because inflation's just eating up our country, eating it up. So it's too bad, but there are a lot of things that could happen. We have to get those wars settled. We have to get, I'll tell you, you have to get Ukraine done. That could end up in a third world war. So could the Middle East. So could the Middle East.
So let's talk about what it takes to negotiate with somebody like Putin or Zelensky, who would be willing to give up any of the regions they already captured.
I don't know. I can tell you that all of this would have never happened, and it would have been very easy, because you don't have, like, that question wouldn't be asked. That's a tougher question. Once that starts happening, because he has taken over a lot of territory. Now, I guess they're regions now too, right? So, it's a little bit interesting that that's happening, and that it can happen. It's interesting that Putin has allowed that to happen. Look, that's one that should have never started. We have to get it stopped. Ukraine is being demolished. They're destroying a great culture that's largely destroyed.
What do you think works better in those kinds of negotiations? Leverage of, let's say, friendship, the carrot or the stick? Friendship, or sort of the threat of using the economic and military power?
So it depends on who the person is. So, everyone's different. Negotiation's interesting because it depends on who the person is. And then you have to guess or know through certain knowledge which is, more important, the carrot or the stick. And with some people it's the stick, and with some people it's the carrot. I think the stick probably is generally more successful, and that, we're talking about war. But the kind of destruction that we're witnessing now, nobody's ever seen. I mean, it's a terrible thing. And we're witnessing it all over. We're witnessing it in all parts of the world. And a lot of things are going to get started. Look what's going on with China. Look at Japan. They're starting to rearm now. They're starting to rearm because China's getting, taking over certain islands. And there's a lot of danger in the war right now in the world. There's a great possibility of World War III. And we better get this thing done fast, because 5 months with people like her and him, he's checked out. He just goes to the beach and thinks he looks good in a bathing suit, which he doesn't. He's sort of checked out. Hey, look, you can't blame him. It's a coup. They took it over. They took over the presidential deal. The whole presidential thing was taken over in a coup. He had 14 million votes. He had no votes, not one. And nobody thought it was going to be her. Nobody wanted it to be her.
Dude, he's going to destroy her in that debate, I think.
Until 6 weeks ago.
The debate's next week, next Tuesday.
Politically, they felt they had to pick her.
1 week away.
And if they didn't pick her, they thought there'd be a problem.
I didn't even realize I was watching a podcast and they said it. I was like, damn, already?
I don't think it's right, but, they thought it was right. And now immediately the press comes to their aid.
If we can go back to China on negotiation, how do we avoid war with China in the 21st century?
Well, there are ways now. Here's the problem. If I tell you how, and I'd love to do it, but if I give you a plan, like I have a very exacting plan how to stop Ukraine and Russia, and I have a certain idea, maybe not a plan, but an idea for China, because we're in a lot of trouble. They'll be in a lot of trouble too. A lot of trouble. I can't give you those plans because if I give you those plans, I'm not going to be able to use them. They'll be very unsuccessful. Part of it's surprise, right?
Right.
But they won't be able to much.
So you have a plan of what to say to Putin
Yeah, I know.
and take office.
No, I had a very good relationship with him, and I had a good relationship with Zelensky too. But I had a very good relationship with Putin.
Topic, but important. You said lost by a whisker. I'm an independent. I have a lot of friends who are independent, many of whom like your policies, like the fact that you're a deal maker, like the fact that you can end wars, but they are troubled by what happened in the 2020 election and statements about widespread fraud and this kind of stuff, fake electoral scheme. What can you say to those independent voters to help them decide who to vote for?
Right. I think the fraud was on the other side. I think the election was a fraud. Many people that, and they wanted answers. And when you can't challenge an election, you have to be able to challenge it. Otherwise, it's going to get worse, not better. And there are lots of ways to solve this problem. Go to paper ballots. Do it the easy way. I mean, paper ballots, and you have voter ID, and you have same-day voting, and you have proof of citizenship, which is very important because we have people voting that are not citizens. They just came in, and they're loading up the payrolls. They're loading up everything. They're putting students in schools. They don't speak a word of English, and they're taking the seats of people that are citizens of our country. So, look, we have the worst border in the history of the world. We have coming into our country right now millions and millions of people at levels that nobody's ever seen. I don't believe any country's ever seen. And they would use sticks and stones not to make it happen, not to let it happen. We don't do anything. And we have a person who was the border czar, who now said she wasn't really the border czar, but she was. She was the border czar, but she was in charge of the border. We have her, and she's saying very strongly, oh, I did such a good job. She was horrible, horrible. The harm she's done. But we have people coming in from other countries all over the world, not just South America. And they're coming in from prisons and jails. They're coming in from mental institutions and insane asylums.
Honeymoon's over.
And they're street criminals. Right off the street, they take it.
Honeymoon's over.
Drug dealers, human traffickers, destroying our country. This is a sin that's been allowed to take place over the last 4 years. We're destroying our country. We'll see how it works out, but it's not even believable. And now you saw in Aurora, Colorado, a group of very tough young
Yeah, they fired that
thugs
one
from
gas.
Venezuela. Were big areas, including buildings. They're taking over buildings. They have their big rifles, but they're taking over buildings. We're not going to let this happen. Let them destroy our country. And in those countries, crime is way down. They're taking them out of their prisons, which is good because good for them.
He's a bad candidate. Wait till he destroys her in that debate.
Any country in the world, I would make sure that America has every one of our prisoners. Every one of our criminals would be here. I can't believe they're going so slowly, but some aren't. But they all are doing it. And we can't let that happen. They're emptying out their prisons and their mental institutions into the United States of America. We can't let that happen.
So a lot of people believe that there was some shady stuff that went on with the election, whether it's media bias or big tech, but still the claim of widespread fraud is the thing that bothers people.
I don't focus on the past, I focus on the future. I mean, I talk about how bad the economy is, how bad inflation is, how bad things like, which is important. Afghanistan was, in my opinion, the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to our country. And because of that, I think Putin went in. When he saw how stupid we were, Putin went in. But it was the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. I really believe that. But, you know, we left 13 dead soldiers. You know, 13 dead soldiers. Many soldiers horrifically hurt with arms and legs and everything else gone. We left hostages behind. We left Americans behind. We left military equipment, the likes of which nobody's ever left behind before. Billions and billions of dollars of equipment. They're now selling the equipment. They're one of the largest arms dealers in the world. And very sad, very sad. And you know, we were there for a long time. I was going to, we were getting ready to get out, then we got interrupted by the election. But we would have been out with dignity and strength. We were having very little problem with the Taliban when I was there because they knew it was going to be tough. I dealt with Abdul. Abdul was the leader. And we got along fine. He understood. But, you know, they were killing a lot of our people before I came down. And when I got there, I spoke to him, I said, can't do it. Don't do it anymore. We went 18 months before this happened, this horrible day happened. We went 18 months and nobody was shot at or killed.
I think that was the carrot or the stick in that case in Afghanistan.
The stick, definitely
So
the
the
stick.
threat of military force.
That was the stick, yeah. It doesn't have to be, but that was the stick.
Well, let me just linger on the election
Get the
a little,
stick out and hit him.
a little bit more. For this election, it might be a close one. What can we do to avoid the insanity and division of the previous election, whether you win or lose?
Well, I hope it's not a close one. I mean, you know, I don't know how people can vote for somebody that has destroyed our country. The inflation, the bad economy, but in a way, the worst is what they've allowed to happen at our border, where they've allowed millions of people to come in here from places that you don't want to know about. And I can't believe that that's going to be a close election. You know, we're leading in the polls.
When is he going to go on Rogan? What's Rogan's
It looks
problem?
close, but I think in the end, it's not going to be a close election.
What do you think is the right way to solve the immigration crisis? Is mass deportation one of the solutions you would think about?
Well, you've got to get the criminals out of here fast, right? Yeah, you know, the people from mental institutions, you got to get them back into their mental institution. No country can afford this. You know, it's just too much money. You look at what's happening in New York and Chicago and LA and lots of places. Take a look at what's happening. There's no country can afford this. We can't afford it. And we've got to get the bad ones out immediately. Have to be worked on. You know, it's happened before. Dwight Eisenhower was sort of a moderate president, moderate type. But he hated when he saw people pouring into the country. And they were. Nothing like now. You know, I probably got elected in 2016 because of the border. And I told people what was happening, and they understood it. And I won the election, and I won the election, I think, because of the border. Our border is 25 times worse right now than it was in 2016. I had it the last week of the famous chart that I put up was exactly that. You know the chart? When I looked to the right, I said, there's the chart. Bing. That was not a pleasant experience. But the chart that I put up said, and that was done by Border Patrol, that was the lowest number that we've ever had come into our country in recorded history. We have to get it back to that again. We will.
Let me ask you about Project 2025. So you've publicly said that you don't have any direct connection with Project
Nothing. I know nothing about it. And they know that. The Democrats know that. And I purposely haven't read it because I want to say to you, I have no idea what it's all about. It's easier than saying I read it and, you know, all of the things. No, I purposely haven't read it. And I've heard about it. I've heard about things that are in there and there's some things in there that everybody would like. But there are things that I don't like at all. And I think it's unfortunate that they put it out, but it doesn't mean anything because it has nothing to do with me. Project 25 has absolutely nothing to do with me.
You posted recently about marijuana, and that you're okay with it being legalized, but it has to be done safely. Can you explain your policy there?
Just put out a paper, and first of all, medical marijuana has been. I've had friends and I've had others and doctors telling me that it's been absolutely amazing, the medical marijuana. And we put out a statement that we can live with the marijuana. It's got to be a certain age. Got to be a certain age to buy it. It's got to be done in a very concerted, lawful way. And the way they're doing it in Florida, I think, is going to be actually good. It's going to be very good. But it's got to be done in a good way. It's got to be done in a clean way. You go into some of these places, like in New York, it smells all marijuana. You've got to have a system where there's control. And I think the way they've done it in Florida is very good.
About psychedelics. So I'm not a drug guy, but I recently did ayahuasca.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that speak to sort of the health benefits and the spiritual benefits of these different psychedelics. I think we would probably have a better world if everybody in Congress took some mushrooms, perhaps. Now I know you stay away from all of that stuff. I know also veterans use it for dealing with PTSD and all that kind of stuff.
Trump
So
thinks you're all fucking
it's great,
nuts.
and it's interesting that
A guy
you're
like Trump
thinking
can't even
about
wrap his head around that.
being more accepting of some of these drugs, which don't just have a recreational purpose, but a medical purpose,
Yeah.
a treatment purpose.
So we put out a statement today. We're going to put out another one probably next week, be more specific, although I think it's pretty specific.
He's high on
And
life.
we'll see how that all goes. That's a referendum coming up in some states, but it's coming up, and we'll see how it does. I will say it's been debated. You take a look at the numbers, it's been very hard to beat it. So I think it'll generally pass, but you want to do it in a safe way.
Speaking of marijuana, let me ask you about my good friend Joe Rogan. You had a bit of tension with him. So when he said nice things about RFK Jr., I think you've said some not so nice things about Joe. I think that was a bit unfair. And as a fan of Joe, I would love to see you do his podcast because he is legit the conversationalist in the world. So what's the story behind the tension?
I don't think there was any tension, and but I don't know him. I only see him when I walk into the arena with Dana, and I shake his hand. I see him there, and I think he's good at what he does, but I don't know about doing his podcast. I mean, I said do it, but I haven't been asked, and I'm not asking them, I'm not asking anybody.
It sounds like a challenging negotiation situation.
No, it's not really a negotiation. Sort of a liberal guy, I guess, from what I understand. Likes Kennedy. This was before I found this out, before Kennedy came in with us. He's going to be great. Bobby's going to be great. But I like that he likes Kennedy. I do too. He's a different kind of a guy, but he's got some great things going. I think he's going to be beyond politics. I think he could be quite influential in taking care of some situations that you probably would agree should be taken care of.
And post as an example, I'd love to get your psychology about behind the tweets and the posts on Truth. Are you sometimes being intentionally provocative, or are you just speaking your mind? Times where you regret some of the truths you posted.
Yeah, I do. But not that often, honestly. I do a lot of reposting. The ones you get in trouble with are the reposts, because you find down deep they're into some group that you're not supposed to be reposting. You don't even know if those groups are good, bad, or indifferent. But the reposts are the ones that really get you in trouble. When you do your own words, it's sort of easier. But the reposts go very quickly. And if you're going to check every single little symbol, and I don't know, it's worked out pretty well for me, I tell you. It's truth is very powerful. Truth. And it's my platform, and it's been very powerful. Very, very powerful. It goes everywhere. I call it my typewriter. You know, that's actually my typewriter.
What are you doing usually when you're composing the truth? Like, are you chilling back on a couch?
Couches, beds,
Okay.
different things. I mean,
Like late at night? Just
I'd like to do some later. You know, I'm not a huge sleeper, but whenever I do them, you know, past like 3 o'clock,
Mhm.
they the next day. Trump was that true thing. Okay, Trump was true thing at 3 o'clock in the morning, and there should be no problem with that. And then when you think about time zones, how do they know that you're like, you know, in a time zone like an Eastern zone? So, but every time I do it after like 2 or 3 o'clock, it's like, why is he doing that? But it's gotten, in, you know, truth has become a very successful platform, and I like doing it. And it goes everywhere. As soon as I do it, it goes everywhere.
Country seems more divided than ever.
Yeah.
What can you do to help from that division?
Well, you can get rid of these two people. They're terrible. They're terrible. You don't want to have them running this country. They're not equipped to run it. Joe, it's a disaster. And they're being worse than him. We'll see. I think a lot's now, you know, the convention's over with, and I see them leading in just about all the polls now. They had their little honeymoon period, as they call it. And we'll see how that all goes. Who knows?
Personal opinion, I think you are at your best when you're talking about a positive vision of the future versus criticizing the other side.
Yeah, I think you have to criticize, though. I think they're nasty. They came up with a story that when I call soldiers that died in World War One, the losers, okay. Now, number one, who would say that? Who would say it to military people? Nobody. It was a made-up story. It was just a made-up story. And they like to repeat it over again. They know it was made up. 26 witnesses that nothing was said. They don't want to hear about that. Like she lied on McDonald's. She said that she worked at McDonald's. It's not a big lie, but it's a big lie. It's so, they just went and they checked. And unless you can show something, they don't talk about, the press isn't going to follow up with it, but I'll keep hammering it. But she never worked at McDonald's. It was just a, you know, sort of a cool thing to say, hey, I worked at McDonald's, you know. But one of the worst was, so I went to Arlington at the request of people that lost their children. There'll always be children to those people, you understand that. That's not the incorrect thing to say. The mother comes up, I lost my child. But, you know, the child is a soldier. And lost the child because of Biden and because of Kamala. Just as though they had a gun in their hand, because it was so badly handled. It should have been done at Bagram, which is the big air base. It shouldn't have been done at a small little airport right in the middle of town where people stormed it. It was a true disaster. And they asked me if I'd come and celebrate with them. 3 years. They died 3 years ago. And I said, I'm going to try. I got to know them because I brought them here, actually. One night, they almost all came here. And they said, I wonder if Trump will actually come and see us. I heard they were here. I came set. So we stayed for like 4 hours listening to music up on a deck right upstairs. Beautiful. And they were great people. So they called me over the last couple of weeks and they said, we're going to have a reunion, a 3-year reunion. Would you be able to come? It was very hard for me to do it logistically, but I said, I'll get it done. And I got there, and we had a beautiful time. I didn't run away. I didn't just walk in, shake hands, and walk out. Go do, and I wasn't looking at my watch like Joe Biden does. And it was amazing. So I did it for them. I didn't do it for me. I don't need the publicity. I mean, I get more publicity probably than anybody. You would know that better than me, but I think maybe more than anybody. Maybe more than anybody that's ever lived. I don't know. but I don't think anyone could have anymore. Every time you turn on television, there's like 9 different stories, all on different topics in the world. As an example, you interview a lot of people, good people, successful people. Let's see how you do with this interview versus them, okay? I mean, I can tell you right now, you're going to get the highest numbers you've ever had by sometimes a factor of 10. But when a Gold Star family asks me to come in and spend time with them, and then they said, "Sir," we did a ceremony, and then we went down to the graves, which was away. They said, "Sir, would you come to the grave?" And then they said when we were there, it's very sad actually, because these people shouldn't have died. They shouldn't have died. They died because of Biden and because of Kamala. Because it's just like if they pulled the trigger, okay? Now, I don't know if that's controversial to say, but I don't think it is. Afghanistan was the most incompetently run operation I think I've ever seen, military or otherwise.
Right.
They're incompetent. But the families asked me if I'd go. I did go. Then the family said, could we have a picture at the tombstone of my son? And we did. Son or daughter, there was a daughter too. And I took numerous pictures with the families. I don't know if anybody else that was in the pictures, but they were mostly families, I guess. That was it. And then I left. I spent a lot of time with them. Then I left, and I get home that night, and I get a call that the Biden administration, with Kamala, is accusing me of using Arlington for publicity. I was just the opposite. The opposite. And actually, did you see that it just came out? The families actually put out a very strong statement defending me. They said, we asked them to be there.
Politicians and the media can play those games, and you're right, your name gets a lot of views. You're probably legit the most famous person in the world. But on the previous thing, in the spirit of unity, you used to be a Democrat. Setting the politicians aside, what do you respect most about people who lean left, or Democrats themselves, or of that persuasion, progressives, liberals, and so on?
Nothing.
Well, look, I respect the fact that everybody's in there. You know, to a certain extent, life is what you do while you're waiting to die, so you might as well do a good job. I think in terms of what's happening now, I think, you know, we have a chance to save the country. This country's going down. And I called it with Venezuela. I called it with a lot of different countries. And this country's going down. If we don't win this election coming up on November 5th, is the most important election this country's ever had. Because if we don't win it, I don't know that there'll be another election. It's going to be a communist country. We're close.
And there's a lot of people listening to this, myself included, that doesn't think that Kamala is a communist.
Well, she's a Marxist.
Her father is a Marxist,
That's right.
and she's
It's
advocating.
a little unusual. Yeah.
She's advocating for some policies that are towards the direction of democratic socialism, let's say. But there's a lot of people that kind of know the way government works, and they say, well, none of those policies are going to actually come to reality. It's just being used during the campaign to, you know, groceries are too expensive, we need them cheaper, so let's talk about price controls, and that's never going to come to reality.
To reality. Look, I mean, she came out with price control. It's been tried like 121 different times at different places over the years, and it's never worked once. It leads to communism. It leads to socialism. It leads to having no food on
Turn
the
that switch off
shelf.
downstairs. The one at the
To
top.
tremendous inflation.
The two up top. You need to shut
It's
them off.
just a bad
Right
idea.
above the TC.
Whenever we use terms like communism for her, and I don't know if you know this, but some people call you a fascist.
Yeah, they do. So I figure it's all right to call them a communist. Yeah, they call me a lot worse than I call them.
They do indeed. It's just sometimes...
It's interesting, though. They'll call me something that's terrible, and I'm back. And they'll say, isn't it terrible what Trump said? I said, but wait a minute, they just called me. So you have to fight fire with fire. I believe they're very evil people. These are evil people. You know, we have an enemy from the outside, and we have an enemy from within. And in my opinion, the enemy from within are radical left lunatics. And I think you have to fight back.
There's a lot of fighting fire with fire. It's too easy to forget that there's a middle of America is it's moderate and kind of sees the good in both sides and just likes one side more than the other in terms of policies. Like I said, there's a lot of people that like your policies, that like your skill in being able to negotiate and end wars, and they don't see the impending destruction of America.
We had no wars when I was president. That's a big thing. Not since 78 years has that happened. But we had no wars when I was president. We defeated ISIS, but that was a war that was started that we weren't anywhere near defeating. But think of it, I had no wars. And Viktor Orban, the prime minister of Hungary, said the world has to have Trump back. But he was afraid of Trump. Now, that's what he said. So I'm not using that term, but I think they respected me. But he said China was afraid, Russia was afraid, everybody was afraid. And I don't care what word they use. Probably that's even a better word, if you want to know the truth. But let's use the word respect. They had respect for me, they had respect for the country. I mean, I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, the Russian pipeline. Nobody else could have done that. I ended it, it was done. And Biden comes in and he approved it. So we're defending Germany and these other countries for peanuts compared to what it's worth. And they're paying the person we're defending them against billions and billions of dollars for energy. I said, how does that work? And we had it out with them, and it worked out good, and they paid hundreds of billions of dollars. Or you wouldn't even have a NATO right now. You wouldn't have NATO if it wasn't for me.
The leader of the United States, you were the most powerful man in the world. As you mentioned, not only the most famous, but the most powerful. And if you become leader again, you will have unprecedented power. Just on your own personal psychology, what does that power do to you? Is there any threat of it corrupting how you see the world?
No, I don't think so. Look, I've been there for 4 years. I could have big number in Hillary Clinton. I thought it looked terrible to take the president's wife and put her in prison. She's so lucky. I didn't do anything. Lucky. Hillary is a lucky woman because I had a lot of people pushing me to. They wanted to see something, but I could have done something very bad. I thought it looked so bad. Think of it. You have the President of the United States, and you also had Secretary of State, right? She was. But you're going to put the President's wife in prison? I got out there, they have all these hoaxes. They're all hoaxes. All these dishonest hoaxes, just like they did in the past with Russia. That was a hoax. The 51 different, agencies or agents, that was a hoax. The whole thing was a hoax. There was so many hoaxes and scams. But I didn't want to put her in jail. And I explained it to people. They say, lock her up. We won. I said, put her in jail. We want to bring the country together. I want to bring the country together. Bring the country together by putting her in jail. But then when I got out, went to work on me, it's amazing. And they suffer from massive Trump derangement syndrome, TDS. And I don't know if it's curable from their standpoint.
A lot of people are very interested in footage of UFOs. The Pentagon has released a few videos, and there's been reports from fighter pilots. So a lot of people want to know, will you help push the Pentagon footage, which a lot of people claim is available?
I'll do it. I would do that. I'd love to do that. I have to do that. You're also pushing me on Kennedy. And I did release a lot, but I had people come to me and beg me not to do it. But I'll be doing that very early on. No, but I would do that.
The moment where you had some hesitation about Epstein, releasing some of the documents on Epstein. Why the hesitation?
And, I'm not involved. I never went to his island. Really. But a lot of people did.
Why do you think so many smart, powerful people allowed him to get so close?
He was a good salesman. He was, a hale and hearty type of guy. And he had some nice assets that he'd throw around, like islands. But a lot of big people went to that island. But fortunately, I was not one of them.
Found out in there.
It's just very strange for a lot of people that the list of clients that went to the island has not been made public.
Yeah. It's very interesting, isn't it? Probably will be.
If you were able to, you would be.
You take a look at it. Now, Kennedy's interesting because it's so many years ago. They do that for danger, too, because, it endangers certain people, et cetera, et cetera. So Kennedy is very different from same thing. Be inclined to do the Epstein, I'd have no problem with it.
Good to hear. Strength when you're getting attacked. You're one of the most attacked people in the world.
I think you can't care that much. I know people that care so much about everything, like what people are saying. You can't care too much because you end up choking.
One of the tragic things about life is that it ends. What do you think about your death? Are you afraid of it?
I have a friend who's very, very successful, and he's in his 80s, mid-80s, and he asked me the exact same question. I turned it around, I said, well, what about you? He said, I think about it every minute of every day. And then a week later he called me to tell me something, and he starts off the conversation by going, tick, tock, tick, tock. This is a dark person, in a sense, but it is what it is. I mean, if you're religious, you have, I think, a better feeling for it. You're supposed to go to heaven, ideally not hell. Supposed to go to heaven if you're good. I think our country's missing a lot of religion. I think it really was a much better place with religion. It was almost a guide, to a certain extent it was a guide. You want to be good to people. Without religion, there are no guardrails to see us get back to religion, more religion in this country.
Well, Mr. President, thank you for putting yourself out there, and thank you for talking to me.
I love the country. I want to see the country be great. And we have a real chance of doing it, but it's our last chance, and I appreciate it very much.
The nation is at a crossroads.
It's pretty good.
We've never seen it so divided. Half of the country lives in fear of one presidential candidate.
Or in the shadows.
Thanks for listening to this conversation with Donald Trump. To support this podcast, please check out our sponsors in the description. And now, this is a good place to, can you steel man the case for Trump?
Yeah. So Trump is a massive risk because of all the things we talked about earlier. But there is a percentage chance that he's such a wild card that he overturns the whole system. And that is why the establishment is a little scared of him. So if he's in office, here, I'll give you a case of Donald Trump doing something right. Something wrong first and then something right. So he bombs Soleimani, the top general of Iran, and kills him. That risks World War III. That risks a giant war with Iran that devolves. Iran is 4 times the size of Iraq. If you're anti-war, you should have hated that he assassinated Soleimani. But after the assassination, Iran doesn't want to get into it, even though they're in a rage, and they do a small bombing. You can tell if it's a small or a big one, right? So that's them saying, we don't really want war, but for our domestic crowd, we have to bomb you back, right? And that's when the military-industrial complex comes to Trump and says, no, you have to show them who's tough and bomb this area. And Trump says, no, they did a small bombing, not a large bombing. I don't want the war. I'm not going to do that bombing. That was this shining moment.
Yeah, for me, one of the biggest steel man for Trump is that he has both the skill and the predisposition to not be a warmonger. He, I think, better than the other candidates I've seen, is able to end wars. And end them, now you might disagree with it, but in a way where there's legitimately effective negotiation that happens. Like, I just don't see any other candidate currently being able to sit down with Zelensky and Putin and to negotiate a peace treaty that both are equally unhappy with.
So, on the one hand, almost all other politicians are going to be controlled by the military-industrial complex, and that complex wants to bleed Russia dry, and that's what the Ukraine war is doing. It's a double win for the defense contractors. Number one, every dollar we send to Ukraine is actually not going to Ukraine. It's going to U.S. defense contractors, and then they are sending old weapons to Ukraine. The money is to build new weapons for us. So a lot of people don't know that. So the defense contractors want that war to go on forever, and they're an enormous influence in Washington. The second win is they're depleting Russia, and Russia has gotten themselves into a quagmire like we did in Iraq and Afghanistan, and they're bleeding out. So the military-industrial complex wants Russia to bleed out for as long as humanly possible. They actually care more about their own interests, of course, than they do about Ukrainian interests. So, in fact, there's a good argument to be made that Ukraine could have gotten a peace deal earlier, and we prevented it. So, but the bottom line now is
the guy you voted for, clown.
probably how a deal gets done is they let go of 3 more areas in Ukraine. They already lost Crimea. They'd have to let go of 3 more regions, and that is tough because at that point Russia's a little bit encouraged. Every time they do an invasion, they get more land. They might not get all the land they wanted, but they get a lot of land. So it's a very difficult issue.
But literally, which person, if they become president, will end the war?
Our war. Because Trump will go in and he loves Russia and Putin anyway.
I just disagree with it. He loves Russia, the implication of that, meaning he will do whatever Putin tells him. I think
He'll do 90% of what Putin tells him.
I just disagree with that. I think he wants to be the kind of person that says "fuck you" to Putin, while patting him on the back and being, but out negotiating Putin.
I don't like talking about Russia because there's so much emotions that go into that topic. The right wing, the minute you mention Russia, they're like, "Oh, it's a hoax," and all this.
You made a fool of yourself
that comes
for
with
years,
it, etc.
talking about it. Now
To
you
me,
don't want to talk
Russia's
about
not
it no
any
more.
different than Saudi Arabia.
Like
or
COVID, they
Israel
don't talk
for
about that
Trump.
either.
You give me money, I like you. You buy my apartments, I like you, right? If you don't give me money, I don't like you. It's not that complicated. So, okay, don't worry about the Russia part of it. Like, the bottom line is, Trump thinks, what do I care about those 3 regions of Ukraine? I want to get this thing done, right? So, he'll go and he'll say, Ukraine, we're going to withdraw all help unless you agree to a peace deal with Russia, and Russia wants those 3 regions. That's the peace deal.
God forbid
That's
we
it.
had peace and people
So
stop
Ukraine will
dying.
lose
God
a
forbid.
part of their country, and
God
we'll get to a
forbid.
peace deal.
Yeah, I hope not.
The
I hope not. I
horror!
think Trump, sees themselves
Just let Russia take everything.
wants to
Fuck
be a
it.
great negotiator.
Fuck saving
So,
some of it. Let's just keep
Personally,
going. Get the whole thing going.
want
Fuck
the
it.
death
You're right.
of the people.
You're right,
down.
guy. You're a
I
genius.
think Trump will
Fuck
bring
it.
that much faster. And I
Give him the whole
disagree
fucking
with
thing.
you. Or at least my hope
You're
is
smart.
he would negotiate something that would
You're a
be
fighter. You don't
He's
quit.
not. His anti-war record is so complicated because
Oh, sure it is.
moving the embassy in Israel and killing the top Iranian general were super provocative, and they could have easily triggered
But
a
they
giant
didn't.
war there.
But they didn't. So
and then you know
clearly he
what's
knows
going to
more than
happen
you,
if you get
retard.
into any kind of real
He
war.
knows more
Trump's
about it
gonna
than
wanna
you
prove
do.
His buttons larger.
He's a better
So then he's
strategist
going to
than
do
you.
massive, ridiculous.
A fat slob who can't. He
bombings.
couldn't
I
win
mean,
an
I'm worried
election.
about nukes. And so we had Giuliani on the show on the RNC, and I asked him this question. I said, he keeps saying,
Maple,
"Oh, they wouldn't
harvest
do
all
it if I
these
was in
plants
charge."
in here. They're ready. I think
I'm
they're
like,
ready.
what does that mean? Because it sounds like what it means is they wouldn't do it because they know if they
give
did
it about
I would
20
do
minutes.
something insane, like attack Russia or use nukes.
Let it finish.
And Rudy said,
Let it
yeah,
brood
that's
all the
what it
way.
means.
and then pick it
So
up right.
that means you have to at least bluff that, and you have to get them to believe that he's a madman. That's the madman theory of Nixon, and Rudy said that too. He was very clear about it. But the problem is, if you get your bluff called, And so if you actually attack Russia, you're going to start World War III. So that's why, yeah, if you could just get away with bluffing, maybe, but he's playing a very dangerous game, and he massively increased drone strikes. On the other hand, he didn't bomb Iran further, and on the other hand, he started the process of withdrawal from Afghanistan. So, not black and white, complicated record. And one thing, I'll give him another piece of credit here. I think I'm taking the steel manning too far. But here's the credit was that changed the rhetoric of the right wing. They went from the party of Dick Cheney, war is great, and all Muslims are evil, and so he hates Muslims too, but that's a different thing, right? But we have to attack the enemy, we have to start wars, etc. To now, Republican voters are generally anti-war and hate Dick Cheney. Oh, I'll take it. So that's a great thing that Trump did, even if he didn't mean it. Even if he does these provocative things that could lead to a much worse war. Even if I'm worried that he'll be so reckless he'll start a bigger war, at least he did that right. And so I'm happy to have our right-wing brothers and sisters join us in the anti-war movement. And I'm not being a jerk about it. I love it. And so this is another thing the left does wrong from time to time, which is, you agree with a right winger 2%, they'll be like, oh, welcome in, come on, vote for Trump, come on in, yeah, woohoo, water's warm, right? If you if you disagree with the left 2%, they're like, that's it, you're banished and you're a Nazi. Brother, how are we gonna win an election if you're banishing everybody there is, right? So hold up, these Republican voters are coming at your anti-war position. Take the win. Oh, they're MAGA and I won't deal with them. I agree with you. That doesn't make any sense. Take the win, right? So when Charlie Kirk says yes to paid family leave, when Patrick Bet-David on his program roughly says yes to paid family leave, take the win.
They don't want to win. Don't you get it? They want to use that as talking points. Simple 5, I'll make that my wallpaper. I mean, what's $1 gonna do in this economy? Yeah, it's a 5. I don't even know who that is.
Are not Trump's electors. Let's
talk about Donald Trump. So to me, the two biggest criticisms of Trump, the fake elector scheme. Out of that whole 2020 election, the fake elector scheme is the thing that really bothers me. And then the second thing, across a larger time scale, is the counterproductive division that he's created in, let's say, our public discourse. 5 criticisms of Trump.
So, number one, I have the same exact thing as you. The fake elector scheme is unacceptable, totally disqualified. So, the fake elector scheme was a literal coup attempt. So, he doesn't win the election. For folks who don't know, I need to explain why it's a coup attempt. because you just throw out words and then people get triggered by the words and then they go into their separate corners, right? So the January 6th rioters, they were not going to keep the building. That was not a coup attempt. It's not like, oh, the MAGA guys have the building, I guess they win, right? No, that was never going to happen. So what was the point of the January 6th riot? It was to delay the proceedings. Why did it matter that they were going to delay the proceedings? Because if you can't certify the election, they wanted general confusion and chaos so that the Republicans in Congress could say, well, we don't know who won, so we're going to have to kick it back to the states. In the states, they had the fake electors ready. Now remember, the fake electors are not Trump's electors. Both candidates have a slate of electors, Biden's electors and Trump's electors. They go to the Trump electors first in this plan, and half the Trump electors go, no, I'm not going to pretend Trump won the election when he didn't win the election. So they're like, shit, now we got to come up with fake electors, okay? So they enlist these Republicans who go, yeah, I'll pretend Trump won, right? And so they sign a piece of paper. That's fraud, and that's why a lot of them are now being prosecuted in the different states. And so the idea is the Republican legislators then go, we're sending these new electors in. And we think Trump won Arizona and Georgia and Wisconsin, right? That was the idea, that was the plan. And then you come back to the House. At that point, when there are two different sets of electors, the rule, constitutional rule is the House decides. But the House decides not on a majority, because the Democrats had the majority at the time. They decide on a majority of the states. They vote by state. And the Republicans have the majority of the states. So in that way, you steal the election, even though Trump didn't win, you install him back in as president. That is a frontal assault on democracy. Who's it? And then Trump, on top, just blabbers out, well, sometimes if there's massive fraud in an election, in other words, I think I won. I don't even think that, I'm just saying that I won, right? He says you can terminate any rule, regulation, or article even in the Constitution. No, brother, you cannot terminate the Constitution because you'd like to do a fake elector scheme and do a coup against America. Fuck you. Okay, so I'm never going to allow this wannabe tyrant to go back into the White House and endanger our system. And so you want to endanger the corrupt system? I'm the guy. Okay, let's go get that corrupt system and tear it down. If you want to endanger the real system, democracy, capitalism, the Constitution, then I'm your biggest enemy. So I'm never going to take that risk. And you see it every time he goes to talk to a dictator. Look, guys, I'm asking you to be principled, right? I asked the left of that, and we drive away some of our audience when we do that. So we got the balls to do that to our own side. So for the right wing, be honest. If it was Joe Biden or Barack Obama or Kamala Harris that went and wrote quote unquote love letters to a communist dictator who runs concentration camps, you would say, communist, we knew it, look at that. And Trump literally says about Kim Jong-un, we wrote love letters to one another, we fell in love. If a Democrat said that, they'd be
I've been talking all day, I'm sick. We're listening to
their career would be instantly over.
I feel like
right? But Trump, whenever it's Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin, don't get into Russia, but it's just that he's a strong man, right? Kim Jong-un, or any Viktor Orban, Duterte in the Philippines, anytime it's a strong man that says, screw our Constitution, screw our rules, I want total loyalty to one person, Trump loves him. He loves them. He said once, he's like, oh, it's great. You go to North Korea or China, and when the leader walks in, everybody applauds. And everybody listens to what he says. That's how we should be here. No, brother, that's not how we should be here. You hate democracy. You want to be the sole guy in charge. As a populist, you should loathe Donald Trump.
Okay, we get it, guy. Same guy told us before Biden.
All right. So, big question: Who wins this election? Kamala or Trump? And what's Kamala's path to victory? And if you can steel man, what's Trump's path to victory?
So there's not enough information yet. Since I make a lot of predictions on air, about it on there. People are always, they'll stop me in the streets. They're like, predict this. Like, predict my marriage. Brother, I don't know anything about your marriage. How can I possibly predict something without having any information? So in the case of this campaign, now I got Kamala Harris at 55% chance of winning. It's not bad. Doesn't mean she's going to win by 55 because that would be a 10-point margin. That's not going to happen, right? But I say around 51 to 55. But it's nowhere near over because of a lot of things. One, the Democrats are still seen as more establishment, and people hate the establishment. Two, if war breaks out in the Middle East, which is now unfortunately bordering on likely, right? If that war breaks out, all bets are off.
You mean a regional war?
Like Iran, Israel gets to be a real thing, not just a pinprick and a little bombing here and an assassination there. But no, we're going to war, right? If that happens, then all bets are off and no one has any idea who's going to win, okay? And if they're pretending that they know, that's ridiculous because it's so unpredictable. And then the third bogey for her is if she goes back to where it's at. So there's phases of Kamala Harris's career. She's not necessarily any different in terms of policy. You could frame it in a bad way, you could frame it in a good way. You could say, oh, she's just seeing which way the wind is blowing, and then, oh, she's a tough cop prosecutor, oh, and then she's doing justice reform when people want justice reform. Oh, she's a waffler, right? She's pretty balanced, right? She prosecuted serious criminals very harshly, but then on marijuana possession, got them into rehab. And you know what? That's actually what you should do, right? So I'm not talking about policy. So there you could have one of those views about Kamala Harris, and I get it. I'm talking about strategic stylistically. So Kamala Harris, until the second debate in the primaries in 2020, is a very competent politician who's in line to be the next Obama, right? She's killing it, district attorney, attorney general, senator, and then the first debate, if you remember, she won. She had that great line about, there was a little girl on that bus that was integrating the schools. Oh, it was me. And Biden, being the knucklehead that he is, he's caught on tape going, I don't have that reaction, brother. Okay, because she's criticizing his segregation policy on buses back in the 70s, right? So anyways, so she's doing terrific. And then after that debate, until Biden drops out, is a disaster area for Kamala Harris's career. Primary, she starts falling apart. She can't strategize right. She's for Medicare for all. No, she's not. She's for Medicare for some. What's Medicare for some? I don't know. Right? And she goes in the next debate, and Tulsi Gabbard kicks her ass, and then goes in the third debate, gets her ass kicked again, and she's starting to drift away. Then, at this point, this is funny, I have more votes for president than Kamala Harris does. Because Kamala Harris dropped out before Iowa. Because that's how much of a disaster her campaign turned into when she was leading. She was leading, right? So then she becomes vice president, and Biden, probably because of that bus line, Jill Biden caught tremendous feelings over that line, okay? So Biden's like, here, have this albatross around your neck. It's called immigration. Good luck. I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm not going to change policy, but I'm putting you in charge of it to get your ass handed to, okay? And she does. So that's a disaster. And then she starts doing interviews where she's like, we have to become the being, but not the thing we were, and the unbecoming. And you're like, what is going on? Why can neither one of them speak? Right?
Yeah.
And they're retarded.
And the third act shocks me. Steps down.
And you're retarded for voting for
grabs all those delegates in a super competent way that we talked about earlier.
Playing hard.
And then she goes out and gives a speech. I'm like, oh, that speech is good. Okay, get another one. These are good speeches, no more word salads. Tim Walz and shocked the world. I'm like, that's the correct BB pick. That is a miracle, right? And then she goes and does the economically populist plan, all those proposals about housing that people care about, grocery prices that people care about. Real or not real, that is correct political strategy. So this Kamala Harris is back to the original Kamala Harris,
She
who was a very
just
competent,
lied.
skilled politician.
And as I was
They do.
telling you offline, she's doing whoever's doing her TikTok is like blowing up risky, edgy stuff.
Yes.
I did not expect that from somebody that kind of comes from the Biden camp of just like be safe, be boring, all this kind of stuff.
So you have to give Kamala Harris ultimate credit because she's the leader of the campaign and she makes the final decisions. But there's apparently a couple of people inside that campaign that are ass kickers, and they have convinced her to take risks, which Democrats never take. And it is correct to take risks. You cannot get to victory without risk. So the vice president pick is the bellwether. When Hillary Clinton picked Tim Kaine, I said that's it. She's going to lose because Tim Kaine is playing prevent defense. He's wallpaper. I mean, he'd be lucky to be wallpaper. He's just a white wall, right? And when he speaks, it's white noise. He never says anything interesting. He's the most boring pick of all time. That's saying we already won, haha. Okay. If Kamala Harris had picked Mark Kelly, that's the Tim Kaine equivalent. Okay. Oh, he's an astronaut. I don't give a shit that he's an astronaut. What is he saying? Is he a good politician? Does he have good policies? Is he exciting on the campaign trail? Is he going to add to your momentum? Mark Kelly might be a good guy, but number one, he's a very corporate Democrat. And number two, it's like watching grass grow. He's terrible at speaking, if you ask me, right? So I thought for sure she's going to pick Mark Kelly, right? Because that's what a normal Democrat does. Or if they want to go wild and crazy, they'll go to Bashir. So I was like, please let it be Shapiro, because he's at least not bad. He's done some populist things, and he's strategic. He's really smart. I need smart candidates. Dumb candidates don't help. They don't have a mind of their own. They can't take risks. They're not independent thinkers. They're going to lose. So she picks the smartest, most populist candidate. Boom, boom, we got a winner. That's a good campaign.
Risks when they debate, when Kamala and Trump debate. What do you think that's going to look like? Who do you think is going to win?
It's not close. Kamala Harris will win. Yeah, unless she falls apart. Unless she goes back to the bad era, right? That's risk number 3.
Well, hold on a second. Well, I guess in a debate you can have pre-written. It seems like when she's going off the top of her head is when the word salad sometimes comes out. Sometimes.
Well, yeah, we'll have to see, right? We'll have to see. Because she hasn't done any tough interviews. She hasn't really been challenged. So I hope to God that doesn't happen.
That she doesn't fall apart, you mean?
Yeah.
Because I hope she does a bunch of interviews, right?
Oh, definitely. This is gonna sound really bad. I'm too honest, but I am like in the context of Kamala Harris probably shouldn't come on the Young Turks. We do a really tough interview and it would hurt her. Okay.
Do you though? Like it's tough, but like you're pretty respectful. Maybe I just have my sort of like I'm okay with a little bit of tension. You're pretty respectful. Even when you're yelling, there's like respect. Like you don't do like a gotcha type thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's certain things you could do, like you said this in the past. You can say a line from the past that's out of context. It forces the other person to have to define the context. It's just, sort of debate type tactics over and over. Like you don't need to do that. You just like ask them questions genuinely, and then you argue the point, and then you also like hear what they say. The only thing I've seen you do sometimes, tough that you sometimes like interrupt as you speak over the person, if they are trying to do the same.
Right.
Which
Only if they're filibuster.
Yeah, it's a filibuster. But like that's a tricky one. That's
Right. No, but like the problem for coming on our show isn't that we would be unfair to her. To be fair. So we would ask questions she is going to have trouble answering.
Other corporate.
Right. I mean, like, so Biden said he was going to take the corporate tax rate to 28%, and he barely tried. You say you're going to take it to 28%. Why should we trust you? Right. You guys said $15 minimum wage, and then you took it out of the bill. Why should we trust you? Right. Those are very tough questions. She's never going to get that in mainstream media. Mainstream media is going to have faux toughness, but in reality, they're going to be softballs. Right. And so the debates, you're right, Lex, is a little bit easier because Sarah Palin proved that you could just memorize scripted talking points. And she admitted it later. She was super nervous. She memorized the talking points, and no matter what they asked, she just gave the talking point. Which, by the way, people barely noticed because that's what all politicians do. She just admitted it. And so, Trump's a disaster in a debate. He's a one-man wrecking crew of his own campaign. So any competent debater would eviscerate Donald Trump. I mean, they just, on any given topic, when he says something like here, let's take one lunatic conspiracy theory that he just had recently. And by the way, if you're a right-winger and you keep getting hurt every time I say he's a lunatic or I insult Donald Trump, don't, you sound like a left-winger. I'm offended. Get over it, okay? So we have disagreements. Hear what the other side is saying. By the way, I say the same thing to the left, okay? I say, you think everybody on the right's evil? You're crazy. No, they just have a different way of looking at the world, which, by the way, is an interesting conversation. We should talk about that in a minute, too. But, so I do it to both sides. But, okay, Trump says, I don't think there's anyone at Kamala Harris's rallies. It's, all the pictures are AI. Okay, so let's say he says that in a debate because he's liable to say anything. Okay. You just say, okay, so you think every reporter that was there, every photographer that was there, and being that was there, they're all lying. They have a conspiracy of thousands of people, but none of them were actually there. Do you understand how insane you sound?
So this is a good place to, can you steel man the case for Trump?
Yeah. So Trump is a massive risk because of all the things we talked about earlier. But there is a percentage chance that he's such a wild card that he overturns the whole system. And that is why the establishment is a little scared of him. So if he's in office, here, I'll give you a case of Donald Trump doing something right. Something wrong first and then something right. So he bombs Soleimani, the top general of Iran, and kills him. That risks World War III. That risks a giant war.
Good night.